What's up, everybody? Welcome into this special edition of the Friends of the Program podcast as we do an SEC preview. As you heard us earlier in the week tell you this was coming, we are proud to bring it to you. My name's Brad Tillery. That's Drew McCracken as well, my esteemed co-host. And joining us today from our friends over at College in Magnolia, it's Nick Redfoot. Nick, glad to have you on the Friends of the Program, and I am ready to talk SEC football, man. It's time.
Thanks for having me, man. I'm pumped too. Excited for some real football.
What? You haven't been excited watching the Big 12 get smacked around by the Sun Belt so far?
I mean, it's been fun. That's for sure.
All right, so let's get started. Let's start over in the East. We always hear about the West and the dominance of the West, and makes sense. The East hasn't won the SEC title game since Jesus walked the earth, so that tends to happen. But we'll go in the East, and maybe for the first time in several years, Georgia has real competition. In fact, the preseason predictions came out today, and Florida has the preseason buzz for the SEC East champion. Kyle Trask coming back after kind of coming out of nowhere last year to quarterback that football team. They open up, of course, with Ole Miss here in week one. Nick, what's your take on that Georgia-Florida dynamic? Georgia having to replace a ton of talent, particularly on offense. Their defense is going to be stout, but I don't know how they put points on the board. What do you think, man?
Well, I mean, I think if you're Florida or for Dan Mullen, this kind of has to be it. Like this is a huge opportunity. To be clear though, Georgia's defense is going to be stupid good again. It's going to be really hard to put points on the board, but they are absolutely vulnerable on the offensive side of the ball. And so I think you look at Florida and Dan Mullen's going to get the most out of Kyle Trask. They've got some interesting weapons, a lot of them coming really via the transfer portal with guys like Lorenzo Lingard and Justin Shorter. I'm not sure Shorter's been cleared yet or not. But they've also got some bigger name recruits that are kind of getting an opportunity. So I think I understand the excitement and expectation that maybe this is the year the Gators do it, but I don't know. I still got to see that Dan Mullen offense perform against Smart's defense, because that defense is going to be really good.
That defense is going to be really, really nasty, and I'm not sure even if JT Daniels, let's say he doesn't get cleared until week 3 or 4, just after that Alabama game, I don't think it's really going to matter that much, especially in game 1. But I think in game 2 and 3, that might become a thing. But I agree with you. That defense is going to be really nasty. I'm going to jump just over the state line from Georgia, Nick, or affectionately known to me as Nerd. AU Nerd. You can follow him on Twitter. I believe is it AU Nerd or AU Sports Nerd?
AU Sports Nerd.
AU Sports Nerd. On the Twitters. Definitely give him a follow, especially if you enjoy recruiting. Mainly Auburn focused, but definitely wanted to get that out there as well. I'm going to jump over the state line, though, to South Carolina. You said a make-or-break year for Dan Mullen. This has to be a make-or-break year for Will Muschamp, does it not?
Definitely. I mean, he, that's an interesting one. I really don't know what to expect out of South Carolina. I think they had one of the weirder years last year. I mean, they go to Athens and beat Georgia.
Yeah, I celebrated that game while standing in the stands of Texas A&M for Alabama and A&M that day. My dad's a big Bama fan and came over here to Texas. Or he just moved to Texas, so I promised I'd take him to the game. And before I walked in the stadium, I told all the people at the tailgate I'd run around naked if South Carolina pulled this out. And then I started getting a text like, "Hey, are you running around the stadium naked right now?" And,
no. No, but
I did stand up in the middle of a bunch of people just cheering randomly during a timeout, and nobody knew what I was cheering about, which was hilarious.
Still fantastic. But yeah, this, even with the addition of Mike Bobo, who has got to be an improvement. Yeah. At least he got you Colin Hill.
Yeah, I think he is, and I think for Muschamp, he's always in pursuit of something offensively, just average. He's just looking for average on offense. And I think Bobo could maybe provide that. I just don't know if they have. I just don't know. Period. What weapons they have? I think they had Marshawn Lloyd was a 5-star running back that they beat Georgia straight up for. Talani tears his ACL in like the first practice, and I think I'm trying to remember which receiver it is that's back, but maybe is it Shi Smith or I can't remember. They have one receiver that's a proven weapon. Otherwise, there's a lot of question marks. You know, the defense will be solid. Maybe not special, but they'll be solid enough. But I'm interested to see what Bobo does there. I think he made a comment the other day about bringing the huddle back, like he's talking about
slow
how,
the game down.
Yeah,
play a little four corners football.
So I'm sure that was music to Muschamp's ears. So we'll see. But I don't know what to expect offensively, and I actually think that first game of the season, South Carolina Tennessee, is a fascinating matchup.
Yeah, I was actually about to ask you about Tennessee, another team with upside but question marks. A shaky quarterback in Garantano, but a defense that's been improving. They finished the year strong last year. Beat an underrated Indiana team in the Gator Bowl. I think Tennessee has the makeup to be sneaky late in the season. Florida Tennessee on the last weekend of the year is really intriguing to me because I think Tennessee could screw up the East championship in that respect.
Yeah, and what's wild, and I saw this other night, 247sports.com has this, what they call a talent composite, where they just basically, based off recruiting, what's your raw talent. Tennessee's number 12. They're considered
really
top 15 team in just pure talent. They've recruited. They've got 5 former 5-stars on the roster.
I was already scared of them coming into Jordan Hare this year. Now you just
yeah, they've got a lot of. But the problem for them has been getting all those pieces together. I mean, especially look at their offensive line. It's got a lot of individual players that you think, oh, that guy's really good. Trey Smith, obviously, some big time former prospects and like Darnell Wright and Wanya Morris, but they weren't great as a unit. And I think that's kind of how Tennessee was last year. So, can they get that to gel? And offensively, is it, is it Guantanamo? I can never remember. I always want to say Guantanamo.
Geronimo is what I always
yeah.
I
feel like that every time he throws the ball. It's just Geronimo.
Yeah, can he be it? Is he good enough to take Tennessee to be a legitimate challenge? I don't know, but they've got the raw talent. I just don't know if can they get all those pieces to function together. That first matchup's going to be, because I don't know if it's going to tell us anything or not. South Carolina beats Tennessee. Does that mean South Carolina's good? Does it mean Tennessee's not as good? I really want to see that game just to see what those two teams look like.
That will be the game. That I've got my setup right behind me to where I can watch on the big TV and then I can watch on my iPad. I think I can get 6 games on my setup right now.
Nice.
So that one will be on the big TV while the iPad has Florida State, Miami. But I'm going to jump now and be the Auburn homer. We were kind of talking in our little group earlier today, and you threw out a very interesting stat, Nick, to where we were both under the impression that Kentucky's run defense was really good last year. And that is false. That is a falsehood. So where are we? Lynn Bowden Jr.'s gone from Kentucky, the SEC's leading rusher after 6 games, is gone from last year's Kentucky Wildcat team. What are we expecting from the Wildcats and Mark Stoops this year?
Yeah, I think I was surprised by that because I think I had in my head that lines of scrimmage, this is where they're dominant. Absolutely, their offensive line is a top 3 unit in the SEC. They're going to be able to run the ball, folks. But defensively, I mean, they were 12th in the SEC when you look at it a yards per carry. So if you look at just generic total rushing yards, they look pretty good. But when you actually look at what they were giving up per carry, it was fun, and that number jumps to north of 5 yards a carry against SEC teams.
Is that just basically an extrapolation of the fact that they ran the ball so much, the games were shortened, and therefore, total yards didn't look so bad, but by yards per play, that just changed everything.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, they did an incredible job. I mean, last year's coaching job was incredible. What they did, people joke about Gus and a high school offense. Mark Stoops embraced the high school offense fully and said, "Let's put our best player at quarterback and just let him work, and let's shorten games So I think what's interesting defensively is the front 7 may be weaker than I expected, but their back end is really strong. They've actually are very solid pass defense. So it's an interesting dynamic on that side of the ball. I think, for Kentucky, the big question is going to be, can Terry Wilson provide them any sort of explosiveness through the air? He's not going to win them games. I think that, I don't think anyone's expecting him to go out and become this, SEC leading passer. But if he can become more efficient, not turn the ball over, and somebody emerges at wide receiver, that's a sneaky team. But I do think there's some question marks about that front seven. Just because they're experienced doesn't necessarily mean they're like dominantly good. As Auburn fans know about offensive lines as well. So experience isn't everything. So I think they're an understandable pick as that third team in the East to watch, just because of their makeup. But I do think need to see more out of that defense in stopping the run, because they didn't beat teams like Tennessee and didn't beat teams like Florida last year. And so it's going to be an interesting year for the Cats. I think they're really excited, but we'll see.
Final team in the East I want to talk about, because I think we can all agree who cares about Vanderbilt right now.
Vanderbilt cares about Vanderbilt.
Yeah, they are what they are.
Yeah.
But Eli Drinkwitz going over to Mizzou, going to bring a little more of a dynamic offense than they've had under Odom in the last few years. Coming back from the Appalachian State, where Drinkwitz had a really good season, literally one season before he was out, of the Gus Malzahn tree. Welcome to the SEC, Eli. You get Alabama here for week 1. But are they a team, as the season goes down the road, that maybe becomes that upset special week 7, week 8 to upend the entire Eastern Division?
They could. I mean, they've got some intriguing pieces, especially on the offensive side of the ball. They brought in a ton of transfers. They've got 2 massive receivers that they brought in, and we've got Sean Robinson, the former quarterback at TCU about 2 years ago in 2018. He was a dynamic athlete.
Mm-hmm.
In that system, it's probably going to take some time to gel. They're going to be down. That we don't know who, but they're going to be down a number of players against Alabama. So, I'm basically going to ignore the result of that first week, besides the fact if they,
28.5 is a gift right now and just lay everything on Alabama.
If they keep it close, that would say something. Otherwise, I don't care. But I think they're a team that is going to ruin someone's season down the road in the East, just because I think as time goes on, Larry Roundtree is an underrated running back over there, and they've got one of the best linebackers in the country that no one talks about really, in Nick Bolton, and so they've got a lot of really solid. They always do. It feels like Missouri always got a few NFLers on their roster. You don't know where they come from; they just pop up, and they've got some pieces there that I think that they'll have a game where they put it all together and they upset someone. But I'm interested to see what he does over there in Missouri.
Well, before we cross divisions, guys, I actually want to talk to all of you and get your specs. Both of you guys, Drew, Nick, give me your top 3 order of finish in the SEC East.
Ooh. Well, I'll go first and give Nick a moment. I can't go against Georgia. The recruiting alone that Georgia's been able to pull in over the past 3, 4, 5 years, let's say, I just think he has that head start. So I'm going to go Georgia 1. Florida a close second. The non-cocktail get-together.
It's the cocktail party. I don't care.
Well, but
the socially distanced cocktail party.
Exactly. There we go. The biggest Zoom meeting cocktail party on the planet this year will be really interesting to watch. I'm very fired up for that. And as my number 3, I'm actually going to go Tennessee. I'm very bullish on Tennessee this year. You can say that I'm sandbagging my Tennessee friends, but I really do like Tennessee's schedule. I love what Jeremy Pruitt's building up there. I love that offensive line. I wish I had one of those offensive lines for my own. But I really like Tennessee this year. And then I want to say Kentucky, but I just think Tennessee gets them again.
Nick?
Those are so. I mean, I'm with you on Georgia. I'd love to say anyone other than Georgia, just because it's you want to be the one that makes that bold prediction against one. But I don't. That defense is just so good, and I don't know if there's enough offensive firepower in the East that they'll lose enough to take over. And I think Florida's a solid 2. I'm going to stick with Kentucky at 3. I think to me it's a toss up between Kentucky and Tennessee. My guess is I trust Kentucky to not to stumble somewhere that they shouldn't, more so than Tennessee. But I think from a pure talent perspective, it should be Tennessee. Like Tennessee, this should be the year Tennessee takes that third spot.
It needs to.
And yeah, it needs to happen.
I'm going to go against you guys. I'm taking Florida. I think Florida wins the East.
I'm good with that.
And here's why I say that. They have a much better cross-divisional draw than Georgia does. Georgia has to play at Alabama. And then I think for the first time in years on the road, Auburn actually has a legitimate shot to go into Athens and win. Limited fans, home field advantage means next to nothing. And Auburn catches them in week 2 when that offense at Georgia is still trying to figure everything out.
And we're not even sure if JT Daniels is going to play.
Yeah.
It's not clear at this moment. Florida
gets A&M, and we'll get to this in a second, but I got all kinds of thoughts on Kellen Mond. And then they get LSU, and quite frankly, I think LSU takes a major step back this year. So I go Tennessee, I go LSU, excuse me, let me get this straight. I go Florida at the top, Georgia second, and then I'll take Tennessee third in my top 3.
I'm good with those as well.
Yeah. Let's shift over to the West real quick. And you know what? I'm just going to start where I'm going to get on a rant here. Why in the hell should I buy into the hype of Kellen Mond in Texas A&M? I need a reason, because I've seen Kellen Mond play for 3 seasons now, and I've watched him throw just the shitty, crappiest passes I've ever seen. Sorry, I'm a podcast. I guess I can cuss. Either way, I do not understand the hype. I've seen this guy play in person multiple times. I don't understand it. I don't think he's got enough pieces around him. I think their defense still has major issues. And I don't see how Texas A&M climbs past 4th as usual in the West. Am I wrong?
No. I don't think so.
Moving on.
I'm with you a lot of this. I think, again, this is kind of what we're saying with, Kentucky's defense or their defensive line. In a way. Just because you've been around for a while doesn't necessarily mean all of a sudden mean you're great or you're good. I think the problem is Mon has these moments. He makes these throws, and even myself, I think it was the first game of the year last year. He made some throw on the run, hit it a laser 40 yards down the field, and you just go, this guy's. Maybe he's finally turned the corner, and then he doesn't. Nope. Then he places a real defense. And I think people just want Jimbo Fisher and this A&M program to become what it's paid to be. And I think there's just like, okay, we get tired of picking Alabama, and we don't. LSU just won. Auburn, we need someone else. So A&M, let's just push them in there. But I agree completely. I they've had some massive opt-outs, like Jamon Osborne was a huge one. They lost their starting linebacker, Anthony Hines, and I think Leon O'Neal also opted. Like they've got, especially on the back end of that defense, there's some questions. That's another team that's recruited extremely well, but they haven't put all those pieces. And their offensive line was bad last year.
It was garbage.
It was very bad. And all those pieces are back. And again, just because they're back doesn't mean they're all of a sudden going to transform into an elite unit. I'm with you there. I'm not impressed with that. Jimbo's actually going to have to do something in the SEC before I start preparing, anointing them as the next challenger.
Yeah, I feel better now.
Yeah, you really should. I'm going to talk about the big bully in the room, and they had 10 first-team All-SEC picks. I know. I'm sorry. I apologize that I'm bringing up the Pirate. But Alabama, is there anyone that can really challenge the Tide this year?
They shouldn't lose. I'll put it that way. They shouldn't, from a standpoint of, I think, Auburn, Georgia, LSU, they can challenge them, but Alabama, the pieces they've got coming back, that defense is a year older. I know we just talked about older, but a lot of their mistakes were actually more youth mistakes than talent mistakes. You go back to watch something like the Iron Bowl where you got 3 guys collapse in on a read and Bo walks in the end. So there's coachable things like that they're going to improve on, and they get someone like Dylan Moses back. And then offensively, yes, I don't know if Mac Jones is going to be great or not. He looked pretty good in his. I was impressed with him in the Iron Bowl.
Yeah, I was.
but I don't think it matters because he's got so many dudes around him, and he's got an offensive line that's going to keep him clean. And when you've got guys like Najee Harris in the backfield, Jalen Waddle and Devontae Smith on the outside, they're ticked. They're pissed about last year. So to me, they're the clear favorite across the board, and it'll be interesting to see can anyone actually take them down this year? Because it took a lot, even for Auburn and LSU. It took Tua going out injury, a massive injuries they had across the board for someone to beat them last year.
Yeah, for Auburn to beat them, it took 2 pick sixes and a missed field goal. Field goal at the end of the first half that probably shouldn't have been allowed and wouldn't be allowed under this year's rules. So stuff. If you actually look at Alabama, I saw an interesting stat and a chart. But over the last few years, their offensive numbers kind of go up like an airplane, but their defensive numbers are actually kind of on an inverse climb. Do I think it's enough to stop anybody this year from beating them? Not unless Alabama has one of those games where Mac throws 2 or 3 picks. But I'm with you. I think Mac Jones is criminally underrated in this conference. And I know he's only played 2 games as a starter, but I think he's arguably the second or third best quarterback already in the SEC. From what I've seen.
He's got guts. I know that. I mean, he threw 2 touchdowns with Derek Brown's face mask in his chest.
All up in his business.
And no one's going to have the kind of weapons he has this year.
Yeah.
So, I think Bama's interesting. Not interesting. I think they're going to dominate. Do they go undefeated in a 10-game SEC season? A little tougher for me to jump on that one because we've never seen it.
Yeah.
We've never seen that kind of a gauntlet before. I want to go to LSU, the defending national champs. It feels weird not talking about them yet. And I know people are bullish on LSU and what Coach O is doing, but they lost so much off of that football team, Nick.
Yeah.
I just see a step back this year with an all SEC schedule. Am I out of my mind thinking they could go 6-4?
I don't think so. And the replacements they made were interesting too. So you lose someone like Dave Aranda, who I think is, outside of Brent Venables was when it comes to defensive coordinators, was one of the best in the country. I know there's some struggles last year at times with that defense, but they were, by the end of the year, they were getting it done. And then of course you lose Joe Brady. It's Scott Linehan and Steve Ensminger is your offensive brain trust, and Bo Pelini is your defensive brain trust. Now, you're switching from a 3-4 to a 4-3. There's so many. You're replacing so many pieces on that offensive line. I know LSU folks think Miles Brennan is going to be able to step in and keep this party train rolling, but he doesn't have Jamar Chase. He doesn't have, Edward Solaire. He doesn't have that offensive line. I think, yes, they're immensely talented, but there's going to be some serious growing pains in this team. I think they have a chance to be really good next year, but I think this year is going to be a step back. If it's not, then I'm done doubting Coach O ever again. if it's not a step back.
And by the way, if Coach O, I know, is a faithful listener to our podcast. Coach O, don't spread lies about Joe Brady's arm. Let's not do that. Let's not say that Miles Brennan has a better arm than Joey B.
Joe Burrow?
Yeah, that's what he said today or yesterday. It might have been yesterday. But he said, yes, he said, I'm just going to tell you that Miles Brennan's got he's got a good as arm as Joe Burrow. Joe Burrow did. He's still learning the offense, but he's got a better arm than Joe Burrow.
I would tell you that's a good Coach O impression, but I can understand every word you say.
I apologize. I haven't been that far into into a hurricane yet, and I mean the drink, not the storm. That could be taken really bad. But his name is Nick Redfoot. He is affectionately known as AU Sports Nerd on Twitter. Give him a follow.
Oh, we're not done with the West.
No, I'm just doing the little drop in. I'm doing that's called a radio drop.
We got to talk Egg Bowl, my friend.
That's exactly where I was going. How do you? It's like you know me. Nick, if you had listened to the podcast and our tome, if you will, of 5 or 6 episodes, however many it's been now, You would know our affection, our love, our care, like a child that isn't ours. Brad and I have, for the Egg Bowl. It is our favorite game in the SEC that doesn't involve Auburn. It's mine. It is my favorite game that doesn't involve Auburn. Elastico also gets a very affectionate nod, just for the pure insanity. But I actually introduced my wife to the Egg Bowl last year, and now she's in. She's full in after the dog piddle in the end zone. She's all in this year. And now of all, if we didn't know that 2020 was going to be 2020, we should have known when Lane Kiffin, Joey Freshwater, and the Pirate are the new head coaches for this game. Are you kidding me? How excited are you as a fan of comedy first for this to happen to us, for us to be blessed? In the words of the super fans, we are so blessed.
Well, how excited are you for that, for the matchup and the talking and the craziness? But also, how ridiculously scared of you as a fan having to play against those two coaches every year now too?
We're not talking about that right now. Don't mess up my high on this, because I need this in my life right now. I mean, so excited for this.
I mean, it's hard to make something as beautiful as the Egg Bowl even more emotionally stirring than what was done this offseason. I mean, I think and we've already seen a glimpse of it. All it took was, just getting Lane Kiffin and Mike Leach in the same room for once. We only were able to give them in the room once, so we've already seen it with the little mask popping. It's just it's beautiful, and I have no idea what those two teams are going to do this year, but they're going to be fun to watch. And I think if you're a Mississippi school, that's what you want. You want to be a team that at least no matter what on Saturday you can say, well, I enjoyed those 3 to 4 hours of mayhem that we created today.
I at least think for this year, for Mississippi State and Ole Miss, it's just a whatever year, just like for everybody. I think Georgia Tech and Florida State have figured that out already after their first two games, or after their first game and second game. But I hope Mississippi State can give LSU a game this weekend. I don't see it that much. So much, just because the Pirate doesn't have his weapons, and that team really wasn't built to throw the ball 50 times. So even with the transfer quarterback coming in, I don't know.
Say though, but remember his first game at Washington State was in Jordan-Hare Stadium.
That's true.
And he came in. Granted, Auburn's first game with Gus Malzahn, that was 2013 when Auburn went to the national title game and everything, but they played a pretty decent game that night. It was a 7-point football game. It's not like he can't get a team ready to go initially, because his concepts are not that complicated to learn.
It's very true.
And I think Costello was the pickup of the offseason of any team, because watching Garrett Schrader attempt to run this offense would have been entertaining, but
it would have been something.
Yeah, it would have been. Yeah. I don't even know how many interceptions he would have totaled, but it would have been impressive. Jameis Winston would have been in awe of what was happening.
It would have rivaled the 1968 Auburn game when Florida threw 9 interceptions in one game. Still an Auburn record, and maybe an NCAA record. I need to check that. But
all right, guys, we got about 6 minutes left or so here. So, Nick, I want to save right up your wheelhouse for last as far as team previews go. Tell me about Auburn this year, what they've got coming from your perspective, and how does this season shake out with Chad Morris now taking over the reins on the offensive side of the ball?
Obviously, they're going to be unstoppable. Perfect season.
Here we go. Ready to go.
No, as usual, they are, to me, the most obvious boomer bust team in the conference. I think from a skill talent perspective on both sides of the ball, I feel confident Auburn can match up with most anyone at wide receiver and in the secondary, even with what they're replacing in the secondary at quarterback. It's going to come down the lines of scrimmage. Can this new offensive line it doesn't have to be an elite pass protecting unit, but can they get movement up front? You know, that was honestly, the last 2 years, Auburn's had a solid offensive line in terms of being able to pass protect for the most part, except when they're in Clemson. But they were not built to move. They couldn't move anyone. And so I think there's some guys up front, guys like Broham and Brandon Council, and Tayshawn Manning that can move dudes. But can they do so consistently? Can they get it together quick enough? Because they got to be ready to go out the gate. Defensively, I have more faith that line is going to be ready. It's you know, there's some Colby Wooden being named a starter defensive tackle was a bit shocking to me.
Huge move.
But it seems to me this group is going to be a little bit smaller, but probably quicker and more athletic. So I'm hoping that translates to more passers. You know, it wouldn't shock me if Auburn went 5-5, and it wouldn't shock me if Auburn went 9-1. I think these first 2 weeks are huge, and we're going to know. You know, if Auburn's sitting at 0-2, we're going to be all right. You know,
we know where it's going.
Where this is not going well. If we're sitting at 2-0, you're going, this team's got a chance. So yeah, I'm fascinated to see how does Chad Morris work with Gus Malzahn. Can those two function together? Can they get the most out of Bo Nix, which is going to be the key.
With an all SEC slate, what is an acceptable record for the notoriously fickle fan base that is Auburn?
I think he's got to beat at least one of Georgia, Bama, LSU. I think he's got to beat one of those, more so than, you know, if he goes 7-3, people aren't going to beat
LSU.
Yeah, but beats LSU, or especially if you beat someone like Georgia.
Yeah,
I think people will be like, okay, I think we're gearing up for 2021. You know, 8-2 or better is a great season. 8-2 or better. 6-4, not so great. 7-3 is the one that I go, I don't know. I really don't know. So that's obviously what's going to happen.
Yeah.
See, I look at it and go, 7-3 is better than usual because we've been going 5-3 lately in conference. Well, so hey, that's too much.
That's a good point. Well, and obviously they'll go on to lose the bowl game, so that way it's 7-4.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But 7-3 this year could get you the Fiesta Bowl or something like that.
Yeah, sure.
Crazy. All right, we did the top three in the East. Again, we got to make this quick, guys. Top three in the West for each one of you.
It's going to be a quick Bama. Then I'm going to go Auburn. I don't know why, but I agree. I don't think Texas A&M is going to be very good. I don't think LSU is good enough either. Could I see one of the Mississippis? Not really. They're not there yet. Arkansas is Arkansas. So
there's a reason we didn't talk about them.
Exactly. So I'm going to say Auburn because there's nobody better, and then I'll take LSU as kind of an interchangeable.
Yeah, it's not super exciting, but that's kind of my rundown of what it would be. I think it's going to be an interesting grouping between LSU, Auburn, and Texas A&M. I think right now I lean Auburn over those two, but that just could be because I have more optimism for them for whatever reason. I don't know why that would be.
And because you know them better.
Yeah, but I do think if there's one that sneaks up, Ole Miss is going to be interesting. Lane Kiffin's got some pieces there. They're going to play some shootouts, and it wouldn't shock me if they took someone down that they're not supposed to, purely because they scored 40-plus points on someone.
I'm on a similar train of thought. I've got Bama, Auburn, and then the winner of Texas A&M, LSU, finishing third myself. Okay, we got a couple, just like literally 2 minutes left. I need your SEC championship game prediction. Any SEC playoff teams and any other SEC teams that might sneak into the New Year's Six.
I'll let Nick go first on this one since I've taken the divisions first.
Again, I got about 2.5 minutes.
All right. Unfortunately, I think it's Alabama versus Georgia, and obviously Georgia will go up early at some point, be in position, and then they will do something very dumb, and Alabama will then go on to win the SEC championship and go on to the playoffs. And it wouldn't shock me if someone like Georgia or if Florida goes 8-2, 9-1, sneaks in for that fourth spot for the playoff.
I completely agree. I think that those are I completely agree with your breakdown and who your SEC champion is. I don't see Georgia or Florida, whomever comes out of the East, defeating Alabama. I think that those three will be in the New Year's Six. I think Bama gets in. I'm interested to see how the Big Ten plays out. If Ohio State gets a loss, I could definitely see a Georgia or a Florida coming in, even not winning the SEC. And the Big Ten being shut out altogether, or if Oklahoma somehow loses to one of these.
I can see the Big 12 getting shut out before the Big 10.
Yeah, I do too.
Yeah.
And that's what you're pulling for if you're a Big Ten school, but that's not who we're talking about right now. I think that those are your three teams in the New Year's Six. I could see Auburn sneaking in. I don't think it's there this year. I just don't like that offensive line yet.
All right, I'm with you guys. I think Alabama wins the SEC title game. I take them over Florida. Bama's in the playoff. I do like Florida and Georgia in the New Year's Six. I also like Auburn sneaking in the New Year's Six. There's one thing you have to remember. The Pac-12 is not taking up a single spot this year. So there's at least one extra spot in the New Year's Six, potentially two, depending on how the Pac-12 would have played. I think this is – if there was ever a year you could sneak Auburn Notre Dame in a bowl game, this could be the year, because Notre Dame's going to have an ACC affiliation this year as well, and seems like the kind of year they're going to go 10-1, 9-2, something like that, and get to
Auburn,
a Fiesta Bowl.
Miami
or Arizona, one of the two. Yeah. But I think that is a very, very high possibility. Nick Redfoot, man, we appreciate the time. Thanks so much for doing the SEC preview with us, my man. We really do. Thank you for coming on. Tell everybody where they can follow you, where they can read up on all your stuff.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks for having me. This is awesome. Yeah. AU Sports Nerd on Twitter, AU Nerd on collegeandmagnolia.com. If you're into specifically Auburn recruiting and X's and O's, I spent way too much time thinking, writing, and talking about that stuff there. So.
Don't forget, you can follow us here on Friends of the Program at FOT Podcast on Twitter. Same for Instagram at FOT Podcast. You can like and subscribe on YouTube at Friends of the Program. Same for Spotify and iTunes. You can just search Friends of the Program and subscribe there. For Nick Redfoot, our guest, Drew McCracken, I'm Brad Tillery saying thanks so much for joining us in this special edition of Friends of the Program, the SEC preview. Folks, the Sport of Kings is about to get going. Welcome to SEC football. It is time. Drew and I's wet dream of a full-on SEC-only schedule has come to fruition, and we cannot wait. Look forward to talking to you soon. Take care, everybody.